And I'm joined by a fantastic panel of guests for this afternoon's session. We've got Danny Chong, he's the co-founder of Tranchess. We've got Hisham Khan, the CEO and founder of Aldrin. Marcus Aurelius, core contributor from KlimaDAO, and Tycho Onash from TrustMachines. Good afternoon, everybody. How are we?
Very well, thanks.
So far, so good.
Fantastic. So, fantastic to have you here. Now, what we're going to do now is I'm going to get you all to explain your projects simply in 30 seconds. There is a 5 ETH fine if you fail. So we'll start with you, Danny, first. What does your project do?
Thanks very much. Hi, this is Danny Chong again. Basically, we are a high-yielding asset tracking and management protocol, providing varied risk-return solutions for users of different risk capacities and appetites. So whether you are a holder, a hodler, or conservative or aggressive user types, or even institution, there will be a product for you within Tranchess. Very happy today to be with everyone here to share and discuss more about DeFi 2.0.
Beautiful timing there. Hisham, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Hisham. Aldrin is a decentralized exchange on the Solana blockchain. We have an AMM and order book exchange, and we've recently launched Aldrin Labs. Aldrin Labs is basically an idea to launch an ecosystem to help you cut 50 years of your work in half. And we do that by incubating new products, new ideas, and we have one in the pipeline, which is a wallet designed for bringing and onboarding 100 million users into Web3.
Fantastic. Tycho, it's your time to shine now.
Yeah, thanks. Now I feel I have to explain two things. So firstly, TrustMachines is not a DeFi protocol, but it's think of it as a consensus type of company for building applications on Bitcoin, right? And then secondly, Zest protocol, which I'm building from TrustMachines, which will be, we're currently in audit, but will be a institutional Bitcoin capital marketplace where institutions can take out under collateralized Bitcoin loans, and anyone can earn a yield on their Bitcoin without wrapping or any counterparty risk.
Loving the punctuality, guys. Marcus.
Hi there. I'm Marcus. I'm from KlimaDAO, and we are leveraging blockchain technology to fund the fight against climate change. We are doing that by bringing the voluntary carbon market onto the blockchain, specifically on Polygon, where we believe that the power of DeFi primitives and blockchain technology can be used to increase the liquidity, transparency, and accessibility of the carbon market so that anyone and any organization of any size can participate in the fight against climate change. Excellent work. Right then, so keeping the spirit of short answers going, because I've got a lot of questions to ask you all. Before we talk about DeFi 2.0, let's try and agree on what DeFi 1.0 is. Tycho, how would you describe DeFi 1.0?
Yeah, I would describe DeFi 1.0 as a sort of super interesting and experimental phase, right? Where we basically leveraged open and permissionless blockchains to do finance with these tokens, right? Without needing to know who you are, with instant settlement and all these exciting features that blockchains have to offer.
Brilliant. I've got space for one more person to have a go. Anyone want to have a go?
Sure. I think in my view, DeFi 1.0 is really about bringing a lot of the same financial primitives that exist in the legacy financial market onto the blockchain. I think the two big examples are AMMs, right? Basically an automated version of the order book market maker system in traditional finance. And the other big, I think, innovation of DeFi 1.0 is permissionless borrowing and lending markets, which are very similar to the way that traditional borrowing and lending markets would operate. The only difference is that they're permissionless and they operate on blockchain, so anyone can borrow against collateral.
Fantastic. So this one's for Danny and Hisham. So I'll go to Danny first. Are the types of yields we see on DeFi protocols sustainable?
Not all the use I think we've seen now is sustainable. In fact, I think in 2.0, that's a bigger picture that we need to try and contain. A lot of the times now we are used to the fact that, you go to protocol, there's farming for you to do, and the protocol, in order to gain liquidity, they will put you through some processes, and in the meantime, you gain more tokens, daily tokens of the protocol. But if you do not have something sustainable, you don't have a continuous revenue model to improve this, I think very soon people will just mine your token and then start to sell it. So I think moving into a DeFi 2.0 picture, there has to be products that has capability to earn independent yield, and also more for the protocol to look at how to have sustainable revenue model in the long term.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Hisham?
I totally agree. I mean, all yield is definitely not equal. Anytime you see anything with extremely high numbers, be careful. So we've seen that there really are two ways, right? So one, as Danny mentioned, it's through revenue, right? So if it's through fees that the protocol is earning, then we can say that that is sort of like sustainable yield to the, depending on how successful the protocol is and how big it is. But anytime you're getting yield in the native token of that protocol, you have to be a bit more careful because the token price will fluctuate. And so that yield will not exactly be, always the same in dollar terms. So definitely a lot of variety out there.
Mm-hmm. And algorithmic stablecoins, gents, are in the spotlight right now after UST collapsed. Marcus, ask you this. Is this proof that algorithmic stablecoins don't work and shouldn't have a role in the future of DeFi?
So I would make a slightly less strong claim, which is I think no algorithmic stablecoin to date has demonstrated any success. I'm sort of, sort of an optimist about technology. I don't want to foreclose the possibility of someone coming up with a clever algorithm for maintaining a stablecoin peg, but I certainly think that any stablecoin where the algorithmic process for maintaining the peg is based on basically the market value of the native asset for that protocol, such as the way Luna was structured, I think it's pretty clear that there is no real value being generated in such a system. So there really has to be real value flowing in to the stablecoin ecosystem in order to justify its existence.
Mm-hmm. I've got time for one more person to jump in, if anyone wants to answer that question.
I'd just like to add that, I'm a strong supporter of algorithmic stablecoins, decentralized ones, because if we look at the future and if we expect decentralized finance to be truly decentralized, then stablecoins play a huge role in that. And we would like to see new models, new ideas, coming up. And one example to look at is like the idea behind electronic cash was there, much prior to the launch of Bitcoin. However, Bitcoin really found a neat solution and what made it successful, right? So the same thing with algorithmic stablecoins. Just because the current algorithmic stablecoins, not all of them have worked or succeeded, does not mean that there will be nothing in the future. I'm definitely rooting for one, and I believe a lot of people in DeFi are.
Well, good answer. So let's speak about the industry more generally, perhaps beyond the projects that you're all involved in. This is for Tycho and Danny. What are the trends that you're seeing in DeFi 2.0 right now? We'll go to you first, Tycho.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when it comes to sort of, DeFi as is, I think we've sort of maxed out on like what you can, like how much TVL it can generate from retail investors alone, right? And now the next step is like, how are you going to bring in institutions into DeFi, right? In a way that that works for them, and in a way that they're comfortable with, and in a way that also stays true to the principles of DeFi, right? And I think that's where a lot of really exciting work is being done when it comes to insurance, when it comes to under collateralized lending, and even KYC and KYC tokens, right? So I think especially in the under collateralized lending space, I think there's a lot of really exciting innovations happening, and that will unlock a whole range of much more yield, right? Because when institutions go on the capital markets or raise corporate bonds of some sort, right, they're often doing this uncollateralized, right? And to bring this value to DeFi would be would really be the next step.
Mm-hmm. Danny, what's trendy for you right now in DeFi 2.0?
Well, I want to continue on, what's just being said. There has also to be a consideration for bigger connectivity and accessibility to encompass all users. I think DeFi 1.0 is very much catered to, crypto natives and stuff. But going to 2.0, as what we have mentioned just now, institutions, mainstream, there are more people coming in, getting to know more about DeFi. So there would definitely be a lot of changes that's needed, including like a UI and UX. I think a lot of people have a struggle. Simply starting from MetaMask, going into protocol and going to different blockchains. I think this has to be made easier. First of all, starting from the protocol and to have a user experience much improved. In fact, that's what we're trying to do in 2.0 of ourselves, launching very soon. Now, there are also for kind of like institutions to come in. I think there needs to be a setup of intermediaries or kind of like a bridge building between mainstream and into DeFi. So to help getting into DeFi a lot more easier. I think what was mentioned also, insurance and all this, I think it also adds to the reliability and credibility of protocols. So maybe it could even involve other than insurance coverage for smart contract, for even packs or, other things along the way. It could also mean that the people involved would have to review more of themselves, like at least not all the people in the team, but key people in the protocol will have to be docs and be transparent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, Danny, you've hit the nail on the head for me there. And it really ties in well to my next question, because I cover this space, and sometimes when it comes to DeFi, my eyes just glaze over because of how complicated everything is. And I'll ask this to Hisham next. Does DeFi need to be simpler for the masses to understand? Or is the whole point of DeFi that it is more technical and that it is designed for more advanced users?
I would say both, right? So if you look at DeFi protocols right now, they're really complicated. You couldn't tell your friend who was not into crypto to go and use it. Perhaps even people in the industry that are using centralized exchanges might struggle, right? So when you have an experience, using, let's say, certain wallets and opening certain dexes, and the wallet, the first user experience for you is you got to store your seed phrase and it's right there staring at you with no information. People will get lost. They will lose funds. The second part that I feel personally is we're not going to bring 100 million or 500 million people to DeFi directly, but it'll happen through really kind of like simple on-ramps, potentially Web3 wallets or games that really kind of abstract away all of that complexity. At the end of the day, we don't want users to have to worry about, what chain they're on, what DEX they're on. Like there will always be a small number of people who want to optimize and let's, go for the best price, go for the best yield. But the vast majority of the public probably will choose simpler UX. If there's proof in that, with MetaMask earning a lot more revenue than DeFi protocols through the lazy swap, for which they charge really high fees. People are looking for convenience. And that is one area that even us at Aldrin are really trying to hone in on and bring sort of create this Web3 wallet, which will bring in the next 100 million users that we believe. So we got to grow the user base, and that's not going to happen unless, we kind of make it more accessible and user-friendly.
And Marcus, I want to ask you, are decentralized autonomous organizations really an effective way of getting things done?
Well, I think there's a sentiment in the culture that a DAO is like one thing and that all DAOs are somehow the same. But my experience at KlimaDAO and looking at other DAOs that I've seen in the space is that actually every DAO has its own unique structure based on the mission and the sort of the mechanisms of the underlying protocol. So for instance, at KlimaDAO, we make a distinction between the sort of platform, the protocol itself, and the products, right, that we build on top of that platform. And for the product development, there's a lot more sort of centralized decision-making, because if you put to a vote, where the logo should be placed or the typeface that should be used for our product, it just becomes designed by committee and it's impossible to get anything done. Whereas at the protocol level, with decisions that impact the treasury, we think it's really important that token holders are able to vote on all of those decisions. So I think it's really about each DAO finding the appropriate structure and the appropriate level of decentralization that's appropriate for their protocol and their mission.
Yeah, I take your point on board. I think you've put it really well. Every DAO is different. I worked with a DAO. I'm not going to name them. That'd be mean. But it was a nightmare getting stuff done. It was a nightmare getting an answer from somebody, and it was driving me mad. I had to leave very quickly. So next question then, and we'll go to Tycho for this one. Is enough being done to make DeFi protocols safe to use and secure from hacks? Do you think this needs to be more of a priority?
I mean, I think everyone who's building a DeFi protocol takes security extremely seriously, right? I mean, if you look at, I founded a Web2 company before this, a SaaS company, and if you look at how we build with security there, is just sort of like, okay, this kind of works, it passes our test, let's put it live, and then if it breaks, we'll sort of pull it back, and we'll see how it works. Whereas with this, we're writing maybe maximum a few thousand lines of code, and and then having this audited for months, right? And then the smart thing to do would be when you launch, is to only slowly scale up liquidity, have bug bounty programs, and basically do everything in your power to make sure that it's as secure as possible. So I think when it comes to DeFi protocols, right, and that's sort of what originally was sort of justifying, high yields at the start, is that, yeah, sure, at the start there's smart contract risk, but like as that as you scale and as you do more liquidity, that smart contract risk basically becomes less and less and less. And over time, right, it basically becomes non-existent. At least that's sort of the hope where you wanna end up, and that's something that a bank cannot do, right? A bank will always have counterparty risk, and that will never disappear, right? So that's the returns to scale that we're really getting with DeFi.
Okay, so we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. So I'm going to ask a question of all of you. You've got about a minute each. It's a two-pronged question. Where will DeFi be in 5 years? And what's your reaction to Bitcoiners who say that altcoins are worthless and that Bitcoin is the one and only? We'll start with Danny.
Well, in 5 years' time, I believe that, I mentioned before, there will be a lot of intermediaries, like a central point where people who do not know DeFi or crypto before gets to learn more by, first of all, getting through the intermediaries to plow, don't need to do compounding. There's no need for them to do restaking, and it goes an easy process of directly into entering DeFi projects. But as a result of this, there's more understanding and there's more kind of a proliferation of what DeFi is, and more people will start to go directly into DeFi, and that would start to propel a lot of the more known or even less unknown projects now into the stratosphere or even to the moon. And I believe what comes from after that will be the fact that altcoins, obviously representing the protocols that's doing it, will start to go much higher. And it would definitely be in tandem with also the upward swing in the Bitcoin token price that we'll be seeing in 5 years' time.
Thank you very much. Marcus, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that DeFi will be much more tightly integrated with the traditional financial system than it is today. I expect that we'll see major institutions borrowing and lending, especially through something like Aave's permission pools. I also agree that I think many of the complexities of DeFi will be hidden behind aggregators and simpler interfaces that are built into our more Web 2 experience. In terms of like the sort of Bitcoin maxi belief that anything that's not Bitcoin is not a worthwhile digital asset, I do challenge that. For instance, I'm working in the carbon offset space, and I think that carbon credits are a perfect digital asset to be brought onto the blockchain. They're basically entries in a database that represent climate action taken somewhere in the world. So I think to say that blockchain technology is only useful for payment transfers, the way, which is Bitcoin's primary use case, I think is somewhat short-sighted on the potential of blockchain technology.
Thank you very much. Tycho, you've got a weird one here because you're slightly involved in Bitcoin, aren't you, as well?
Yeah, no, I would like to merge both of them actually, where I would say, to Bitcoiners who have a certain skepticism, right, towards the value of other tokens, I would say, you're absolutely right, because you own a piece of the most secure and decentralized computing system that the world has ever seen. And as Ethereum moves to proof of stake, you're very right to keep holding on to that, right? Now, what will DeFi look like in 5 years? I think our thesis is that a lot of DeFi we see today will actually move back to Bitcoin and start using Bitcoin as a settlement layer, right? Using it as this secure computing network to settle transactions. And these Bitcoiners will be able to use tools like Zest Protocol to earn a yield in Bitcoin on top of their Bitcoin, through smart contracts while settling back to Bitcoin. So
fantastic.
That's that for me.
Very eloquent, I thought. Thank you very much. And Hisham, you get the last word. We've got exactly 1 minute, so go for it.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I believe we'll cross 5 trillion in TVL in the next 5 years. I definitely believe in that. And for the Bitcoin maxis, I just look, they got into Bitcoin because they had an open mind, just like we all did, right? Like when we started looking at Bitcoin and believing in it because we wanted to, keep our mind open. And I think they should do the same when it comes to other tokens. Also, a lot of times, you have to look at what kind of bags people are holding. So if you're just all invested in Bitcoin, you obviously want to just promote that and see it succeed. So a lot of incentives and interests are kind of aligned there as well. Just wanted to mention that.
Fantastic. Well, Danny, Hisham, Tycho, and Marcus, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry I'm ending this ever so slightly early. I've got to sprint over to track 2, where I'm hosting a panel on a multi-blockchain world. But if you stay here on track 1, Zach will be here, and they're going to be talking about decentralized exchanges. Gentlemen, thank you very much for a very pacey chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.